When it comes to menopause symptoms, people like to just think of hot flashes, right? That's the big one. Hot flashes have started. Here comes menopause. The reality is, if you were to list out the most common menopausal symptoms out there, you would see that there are hundreds of them. Now, the problem is if we attempt to tackle them one by one by one, we would get into what I call paralysis by analysis. We would be so overwhelmed that we wouldn't even start. So what we do instead is call symptom grouping. In a second here, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you a handful. We're not going to go through hundreds and hundreds of them, but I'm going to show you a handful of the heavy hitter symptoms that we see time and time again in menopause. From there, we're going to go one step deeper. I'm going to introduce you to what we call menopause symptom grouping. In short, instead of trying to tackle hundreds of symptoms at a time, getting into paralysis by analysis, getting so overwhelmed that we don't even start, we're going to take all these symptoms and we're going to simply group them into what I call the big three. Because when we tackle the big three, it's the domino effect. All the symptoms that live underneath that category start to diminish, start to go away. We start to take control of our health. So let me share my screen with you. We're going to start with some of the heavy hitter symptoms, and then we're going to break them down into our symptom grouping. So on your screen right now are some of the heavy hitter symptoms that we see time and time again. Again, what we're not going to do is go through hundreds of these, but these are the ones that are so much bigger than just hot flashes that so many menopausal women, we feel like it's just us, like our body's broken, what is going on here? But the reality is these are some of the most common symptoms out there. Joint pain, hot flashes, vaginal dryness is a huge one, skin changes like itchy skin, night sweats, feeling puffy, fatigue even if we've been resting, broken sleep, muscle soreness and leg restlessness. Brain fog is a huge one, trouble focusing, bloating, changes in bowel movements, lack of motivation, and just feeling overall flat. Now, even with just taking these heavy hitters, right? We're not talking about hundreds, but even just with starting with this list, if we were to sit here and say, okay, today we're going to talk about joint pain. Tomorrow we're going to talk about hot flashes. Next day we're going to talk about vaginal dryness. Again, it would be so overwhelming that for most of us, we either wouldn't start or we wouldn't stick with it. So what we do with our members is something called symptom grouping. I wish I could take credit for symptom grouping, but it's something that's done by the Menopause Society. And the reason it's so effective, I think of it like striking a match. If you strike a match and you light the other matches, boom, they're all going to go, right? You hear it referred to as the domino effect. You push over one domino, the rest of the dominoes go down. When we can tackle what we call the big three, it makes our job so much more efficient. Here's what I mean by that. The first thing that we have our members do is they go through what we call a symptom checklist. So we're going to give them a big list of the most common symptoms we see in menopause, similar to this, and we're going to go through and we're going to rate them. Which ones apply to me? Which are the most heavy hitter? Which are the ones that are keeping me up at night? Which are the ones that are making me lose my mind? From there, we're going to take those symptoms and we're going to group them under the category of the big three. Let me show you exactly what I mean. If we take a look at our menopause symptom grouping checklist, here's what we're going to see. I call these top three in red the big three. Pelvic floor is kind of our bonus fourth guest artist here, but for the purposes of today, we're going to focus on the big three: inflammation, cortisol and sleep, and gut health. Here's what that means. Remember our big list of overwhelming symptoms? We can take them and we can simply group them under their big category. For example, things like joint pain, night sweats, hot flashes, puffy feelings, skin changes, vaginal dryness. When we see those symptoms, we know, we got to get our inflammation in check. When we see things like fatigue, muscle ache, soreness, interrupted sleep, restless leg, we know rather than tackling each and every one of those, we can put it under the category cortisol and sleep, and that's our target. Same is true for brain fog, changes in bowel movements, bloating, trouble focusing, feeling flat, lack of motivation. We can group all of those under the category of gut health. Now look what this just did for us. Instead of tackling hundreds of symptoms, or in this case, a handful of symptoms, we can focus on those big three categories. We can tackle inflammation, we can tackle cortisol and sleep, we can tackle gut health. And as we tackle those big three, they're going to bleed into each other. So as we're focusing on gut health, our inflammation is going to go down. As our cortisol starts to reduce, our gut health is going to improve. All of these bleed together. But again, rather than getting into paralysis by analysis, how many symptoms do I have to tackle at once? When we use this tool of menopause symptoms, symptom grouping, we get to narrow it down and tackle that big domino, that initial match that lights the way. This is how we start every single member that we work with. Now, tomorrow I'm going to be back in your inbox and we're going to start to talk more about these big three, starting with cortisol. So tomorrow's quick and punchy video, we're going to dive deep into cortisol, what's going on in our body, how we take control. From there, we'll talk about inflammation. From there, we'll talk about gut health. I'm going to send you one email a day going forward. As always, if you are someone who's at that point, I always call it line in the sand, not another day, not another minute, not another second, and you're ready to talk one-to-one, it's the only way to tackle this, really. We can give you general information, but people who are serious about getting to work, we don't work with every woman out there, which is why we always start with that free one-to-one strategy session. I'll put a link in this email where you can apply for that anytime that you're ready. Otherwise, I will see you tomorrow in your inbox. We're going to dive into cortisol and sleep. I will see you then.